They called him America's toughest cowboy, the man who never backed down. But when the world went to war, and Hollywood's brightest traded scripts for uniforms, John Wayne stayed behind. For decades, he was worshipped as a hero on screen, yet haunted by the one role he never played in real life. Was it loyalty to the studio, fear of fading fame, or something far more complicated? This isn't just Hollywood history. It's the story he never wanted told. At number 27, we start with the moment everything changed. December 7th, 1941. The attack on Pearl Harbor sent shockwaves through every movie theater in America. Actors lined up at recruiting stations, and the nation demanded action from its stars. But on that same morning, John Wayne wasn't on a battlefield. He was on a film set in Arizona, shooting Reap the Wild Wind. When news reached the crew, the cameras froze. People said Wayne's face went pale, like a man who suddenly realized the world was shifting without him. At number 26, we uncover the studio's quiet maneuvering. Republic Pictures, desperate to protect its biggest box office draw, rushed paperwork to Washington declaring Wayne essential to morale. It was a clever technicality, a way to keep him out of uniform without saying so aloud. Executives framed it as patriotism. He'll serve better on screen than in the trenches. Behind closed doors, some called it fear disguised as strategy. At number 25, a letter surfaces that deepens the mystery. Wayne wrote to his friend, actor William Holden, saying he was considering enlistment, but had obligations to finish. Historians still argue what that line meant. Was it guilt-talking or hesitation? The language feels torn between duty and denial, as if he knew history was watching. At number 24, his wife Josephine saw the cost. She later recalled that every night he'd listen to radio reports about the war with a drink in hand, silent, motionless. Friends said he became restless, pacing, smoking more, volunteering for war bond events as if trying to prove something. Have you ever felt that pull between what you want to do and what the world expects of you? At number 23, John Ford enters the picture. The legendary director and Wayne's mentor joined the Navy's photographic unit and filmed combat in the Pacific. Ford's letters to Wayne were blunt. "Get out here, you coward." The friendship cooled, replaced by years of tension. Ford later claimed Wayne's performances after that were his way of chasing redemption. He acted the hero he couldn't be. At number 22, we hit the first rumor that refused to die. Some fans believed Wayne secretly tried to enlist, but was blocked by the studio. Others swore he never filled out the forms at all. Decades later, biographers found drafts of enlistment papers, unsigned. It's the blank signature that keeps people arguing even now. At number 21, Hollywood's gossip mills went into overdrive. Magazines praised Clark Gable, Jimmy Stewart, and Henry Fonda for their bravery overseas, and printed awkward silence when it came to Wayne. One columnist wrote, "The Duke stays home while boys play soldiers for real." Studios buried the story, but soldiers in foxholes reportedly nicknamed him Rear Echelon Rider. Painful irony for a man whose screen image dripped with courage. At number 20, an unexpected twist. Wayne's daughter remembered her father receiving official draft notices twice. Each time the studio appealed for deferral and won. She said he never forgave himself. Imagine being immortalized as the symbol of American grit, knowing somewhere inside that you never carried a rifle. At number 19, his work became his penance. Films like Flying Tigers and They Were Expendable blurred fiction and propaganda, celebrating valor while hinting at personal guilt. Critics now view those roles as self-portraits, Wayne playing the man he wished he'd been. And audiences bought it. They needed a hero. He needed forgiveness. Maybe that's why his performances hit so hard. They were confessions in disguise. At number 18, the public reaction reached its breaking point. After the war, veterans returned home to find Wayne basking in Hollywood glory. Many respected him, others resented him. In bar rooms and veterans' halls, the debate flared. Was he a patriot or a pretender? A Marine who fought at Iwo Jima once said, "I don't blame him, but he sure made a fortune off what we lived through." Those words haunted Wayne. The story up to this point paints a man caught between duty and destiny, pride and regret. Yet the deeper we go, the more tangled it gets. Because hidden inside Wayne's private correspondence are hints that he might have tried, quietly, to serve in his own way. Was he trapped by contracts or by fear of fading fame? That's what we'll uncover as this countdown continues. At number 17, a confession buried in Wayne's letters. Historians discovered one note sent to his friend, writer Phil Kelton, where Wayne admitted he felt like a fraud during the war years. He wrote that he wanted to enlist, but couldn't face giving up the career that had just started to take off. Those words, raw, unfiltered, reveal a man torn between ambition and duty. Fans who later read that letter were shocked. How could the Duke, the symbol of strength, be haunted by fear of obscurity? And maybe that's what makes him human. Haven't we all faced moments where the right choice might cost us everything we've worked for? At number 16, the aftermath of guilt turned into obsession. After the war, Wayne's roles grew heavier, almost penitent. Films like Fort Apache and The Sands of Iwo Jima didn't just tell war stories, they were his confessions dressed as scripts. On set, crew members noticed how deeply he sank into every performance, almost like he was trying to prove something to someone who wasn't there. One technician remembered him staring at the American flag between takes, lost in thought, cigarette burning down to the filter. He never said why, but everyone knew. At number 15, the US government came knocking, not to draft him this time, but to use him. As the Cold War began, Washington saw Wayne as a perfect face for patriotic morale. He toured military bases, spoke at rallies, and narrated propaganda films. The irony was impossible to ignore. The man who didn't fight became one of the government's loudest symbols of military pride. Some soldiers respected him for it. Others rolled their eyes. "Easy to wave a flag when you never had to duck bullets," one veteran said years later. At number 14, his peers began to speak up. Henry Fonda, a friend and fellow actor who actually served in the Navy, once said Wayne played bravery better than anyone. But when pressed, Fonda added softly, "It's a role he never got to live." It wasn't meant as an insult, more like quiet acknowledgement. Hollywood was full of heroes, but few carried their ghosts as publicly as Wayne did, and even audiences sensed it. His on-screen patriotism felt real precisely because it came from guilt. At number 13, Wayne's relationship with John Ford finally cracked. Ford, after witnessing combat firsthand, couldn't reconcile his friend's absence from the war. During the filming of The Searchers, tension flared. Crew members said Ford pushed Wayne harder than ever, screaming at him during takes, calling him phony or gutless. But when the cameras rolled, Wayne delivered the performance of his life. The result? A haunting portrait of a man hardened by regret. Maybe that was Ford's way of forcing him to bleed truth into his art. At number 12, an unexpected turn in public perception. In the 1950s, as the U.S. grappled with the Red Scare, Wayne became a loud anti-communist voice. He chaired the Motion Picture Alliance for the Preservation of American Ideals, and even supported blacklisting actors suspected of communist ties. Critics called it hypocrisy. How could a man who avoided combat now attack others' patriotism? But supporters saw conviction. A man trying, in his own way, to prove loyalty to a country he'd once failed to serve. Love him or hate him, Wayne was rewriting his narrative in real time. At number 11, let's talk about what those close to him noticed. His daughter Isa remembered a softer side, her father crying quietly while watching war documentaries. She said he rarely spoke about the war, but whenever footage of Normandy or Iwo Jima played, he'd whisper, "Those boys were the real heroes." That humility rarely reached the public. On screen, he was larger than life. Off screen, he seemed to shrink under the weight of what he hadn't done. At number 10, there's a fascinating story from director Nicholas Ray. During a break on set, Ray asked Wayne if he'd ever wished things had gone differently. Wayne paused, then said, "Every damn day." That pause, those 3 words, say more than any documentary ever could. The myth of the unshakable cowboy was built on cracks of regret he could never quite hide. At number 9, the audience reaction began to shift. Younger generations, raised on real war footage and skepticism, started questioning Wayne's heroism. Film critics dissected his roles, pointing out how his performances blurred the line between fiction and confession. Some admired the honesty beneath the swagger. Others dismissed it as overcompensation. Debates flooded magazines. Was Wayne an icon or an illusion? And the public, divided yet fascinated, couldn't look away. At number 8, the moment that quietly defined his redemption arc. In 1960, Wayne directed and starred in The Alamo. The film wasn't just a war epic. It was his personal declaration of sacrifice and courage. He poured every ounce of emotion, time, and money into it, treating it as if the fate of his soul depended on how it was received. Financially, it almost ruined him. Emotionally, it drained him. But when audiences saw it, many felt something deeper than patriotism. They felt empathy. The man who once stood accused of cowardice had finally bared his heart. At number 7, something unexpected happened. After the war ended, John Wayne was no longer just a movie star. He was a man trying to reconcile with the version of himself he'd shown the world. He started seeking redemption not through medals or military honors, but through the roles he chose. Every soldier he played after 1945, every stoic salute, every last stand, it wasn't just performance, it was penance. He poured guilt, pride, and a kind of desperate admiration for real servicemen into his characters. Watching those old war films now, you can almost feel it. The weight of someone who wanted to prove himself to the ghosts of men who actually fought. Do you think that's something you can ever really make peace with? At number 6 comes one of his most powerful on-screen moments, Sands of Iwo Jima. It wasn't just another war movie. It was the film that turned Wayne into the cinematic soldier America thought he already was. Marines in the audience cried. Veterans said, "That's us." And yet, behind the scenes, Wayne admitted that he felt like an imposter every time someone thanked him for his service. That single word, service, haunted him for years. He told close friends he felt like he was wearing a uniform he never earned. But here's the twist. That same guilt made him fiercely patriotic for the rest of his life. His image became a symbol of American valor. But deep down, he knew it was all built on celluloid courage. At number 5, we find a painful irony. While Jimmy Stewart and Clark Gable were quietly haunted by what they did see in combat, Wayne was haunted by what he didn't. Stewart returned from war thinner, quieter, forever changed. Wayne returned from Hollywood premieres, surrounded by applause, but feeling empty. Director John Ford once told him, "You talk like a soldier, but you never wore the boots." Wayne never forgot that line. It was like a splinter under his skin, a reminder that the world's admiration couldn't silence his own self-doubt. Imagine being the face of heroism while constantly questioning if you'd earned it. Have you ever achieved something others praised, but you couldn't fully accept it yourself? Number 4 takes us to the heart of public perception. By the 1950s, Wayne wasn't just a movie star. He was America's myth made flesh. The cowboy, the soldier, the voice of the West. But with that fame came backlash. A new generation, scarred by Korea and Vietnam, began asking hard questions. Why did John Wayne talk about war like he'd lived it? Some critics called him a hypocrite. Others said he was the moral compass of a nation that needed one. He didn't respond publicly much, but privately, he told friends he understood the criticism. He'd once written in a letter, "I'm not a hero. I just play one." And that quiet confession, almost whispered between the lines, tells you everything you need to know about the man behind the legend. At number 3, a revelation few fans know. During the 1960s, Wayne received letters from real veterans, men who'd seen hell, thanking him for the inspiration his movies gave them. Some said they joined the military because of The Longest Day or the Green Berets. That's when Wayne realized something profound. Maybe his way of serving wasn't through combat, but through storytelling. He once told a reporter, "If my movies make one young man stand taller, then maybe I've done my part." It's strange, isn't it, that the same camera that kept him home also became the weapon that helped him heal. The irony feels almost poetic, like destiny found a loophole. At number 2, we uncover one of his deepest personal wounds. Wayne's daughter once revealed that he cried when watching footage of soldiers returning home. Not on screen, but alone in his living room. He would pause the tape, stare at the faces, and whisper, "That could have been me." His children said that the war he didn't fight never really ended for him. It just lived inside his conscience. Every parade, every speech about America, every flag-waving moment, it all came from that quiet sorrow. And yet he never used that pain to manipulate or self-promote. He carried it like a debt he could never repay. And maybe that's what made him human. And finally, number 1. The truth that ties it all together. In his final years, long after the Westerns faded and his health declined, John Wayne gave one last interview. The reporter asked him, "Do you ever regret not serving?" Wayne paused, stared off, and said softly, "Every day. But maybe my job was to remind people what they were fighting for." That line, almost trembling, was his redemption. He'd spent decades wrestling with his legacy, but in that moment, it was like he finally made peace with it. Not by rewriting the past, but by accepting it. He didn't serve in uniform. He served through story, through symbolism, through the spirit of what he believed America stood for. And maybe that's a different kind of courage. Public opinion still splits down the middle. Some admire Wayne for honoring the troops through film, saying his movies boosted morale and defined American strength when the country needed it most. Others can't forgive what they see as his absence during the nation's darkest hour. But almost everyone agrees. His story is complicated. It's messy. It's human. And maybe that's why it still fascinates us today. Because deep down, we all understand what it's like to wonder if we could have done more, or to wish we'd been braver when history came knocking. Hey, if this video brought you something useful or just made your day a bit brighter, drop a like, subscribe, or share it forward. That simple gesture keeps the whole thing moving. In the end, John Wayne's battlefield wasn't Normandy or Iwo Jima. It was Hollywood. His uniform wasn't made of fabric, but of celluloid and ideals. He didn't fire bullets. He fired dreams, one frame at a time. And while the world may never agree on whether he was a patriot or a pretender, maybe that's the point. Because sometimes, the hardest battles aren't fought with guns. They're fought with guilt, legacy, and the endless search for redemption.